Hey, MCE crew. The Biden administration, no more than 24 hours after Elon Musk purchased Twitter or announced he was purchasing Twitter, that they'd come to a decision on a deal. No more than 24 hours later, you heard the Biden administration announce that they were initiating a ministry of truth. Okay. Now they've dressed it up and called it something about anti-disinformation or some garbage, but it's the Orwellian ministry of truth come to life. Okay. Instituted here by the United States of America. Now, why is that happening? Why were they so swift in acting to prop up this department as soon as Elon Musk announced that he would in fact be buying Twitter? Well, it's because of a man named Mohammed Bouazizi. Mohammed Bouazizi, on December 17, 2010, he stood before a government building in Tunisia and shouted, "How do you expect me to make a living?" just before he doused himself in gasoline and self-immolated or set himself on fire. Now, he did this as a protest because he was a street vendor. He had a cart that he pulled along the roadway and he sold fruits and vegetables. Now, here in Baltimore, we used to have a group of people called Arabers. They had horse-drawn carriages. I remember this as late as being a teenager. My uncle did this for a minute. They had horse-drawn carriages. They would go throughout the city selling fruits and vegetables, okay? And this is part of the way that we got our fruits and vegetables back when I was coming up, okay, in Baltimore City. I understand Philly did it too, to some degree. But listen, Bouazizi was a street vendor. Now, he didn't have much money at all. You can imagine that someone doing this type of work is not rich. They're not even middle class. They're subsistence. Bouazizi was no different. He borrowed about $250 in American money to buy some fruits and vegetables so that he could sell. There was this whole back and forth with the police that came along one day and were like, well, do you have a permit? He didn't have a permit. And he was just trying to explain to them that, look, I'm just selling vegetables. I'm poor. I don't have any money to bribe you into letting me continue on. So they humiliated him. They, right there in the street, they threw his vegetables into the street. They confiscated his cart. All right. So his means of making a living was confiscated by the government. That culminated in him trying to go down to the office to get the cart back. But again, Tunisia is a type of place where money talks, just like here in America, okay? But to the extent that if you didn't have money to bribe right then and there, then there was nothing positive that was going to happen for you. So Bouazizi, at his wit's end, again, self-immolated. And that sparked the Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring culminated, as you know, in people like Muammar Gaddafi being deposed, Hosni Mubarak over in Egypt being deposed. And if you look at places like Libya right now, and even Egypt to an extent, there's big time destabilization in Libya. In fact, Libya has a thriving slave trade, okay, an African slave trade going on right now. You want to talk about slavery? Okay, you want to talk about the advancement of colored peoples? Okay, well, right now, today, Libya has a thriving slave trade. Look it up. Talk about that on another video. But this whole thing with the Arab Spring destabilized that region to this day. Okay. Now, the people, the Western news media would have you believe, oh, this was just a spontaneous desire for democracy and democratic principles. It was economic. Okay. It had to do with autocratic leadership suppressing people like Mohammed Bouazizi, all right, and others. And that little spark, pardon the pun, that little event where he set himself on fire ignited a firestorm. Now, here's what that has to do with Elon Musk and Biden's administration putting this this ministry of truth in effect. The Arab Spring spread like wildfire because of social media, okay? People were able to share what had happened in Tunisia, and it just created sort of a domino effect in autocracies across the region. This should tell you that even platforms like this, YouTube, okay, YouTube, Google in general, Facebook, and Twitter. Now we know Twitter was a left-leaning corporation with an agenda, because now you've seen a lot of people like President Barack Obama, you lose hundreds of thousands of followers, okay? Now, there's a narrative out there trying to say, well, people are leaving the platform because Elon Musk bought it. Bullshit. Not that many people, okay? Because he hasn't even closed the sale yet. That's probably months away. At the same time, you've seen people on the right gain hundreds of thousands of followers, okay? And we're supposed to believe this is just coincidence. No, what it actually is Twitter cleaning up the books before Elon's actuaries and forensic accountants get in there and start exposing what went on, okay? That's what's taking place. So this Twitter is a company with an agenda to suppress free speech. The entire reason why Elon says he's going in there to get the company, all right? Now, I'm really a fan of Elon Musk. However, Elon Musk is unpredictable. So I'm not even, a lot of conservatives are getting like really, really ecstatic about this. I'm keeping my powder dry. First of all, I'm not on Twitter. I didn't get on it back in the day because I can't think in 140 characters. I couldn't do that. So, I never got involved with it. And I have no plans of doing that now. I love Elon Musk, but I do not own a Tesla because it's not cost effective for me and my family. I would go to Mars if he gave me a chance on a SpaceX craft, but I'm not getting on Twitter. I don't care who owns it. All right. However, Twitter is one of the social media applications that help facilitate the Arab Spring. And the United States government is so damned afraid right now that it's sitting on a powder keg. Why? Because of the economy in this country. Now, if you look at what happened with Mohammed Bouazizi and the folks over in Tunisia and other parts of that region when they had that incident go on, again, it was about the economy. It was about food in specific. Now, what have we been talking about here? Now there's this narrative building that, there are going to be food shortages, but it's not going to affect America. I don't believe that at all. Because remember, this is coming from the same people who told you that there would be no inflation. And then when there was inflation, then they said, but it's just transitory. So now those same people are saying the food shortages won't hit America. So here's the deal. When you can do a lot of things to people, okay, and they will live under the yoke of tyranny. That has been proven throughout human history time and time again. But when you start to interfere with their ability to eat and feed their family, then that's a horse of a different color. Marie Antoinette found that out. Let them eat cake, off with her head. So this is why the United States government, as currently constituted, is not trying to hear being able to put these voices of opposition out there. And Frederick Douglass said something interesting. I read a quote recently, and I'm going to paraphrase it. He said that suppression of freedom of speech not only injures the one speaking, but also the one that could have potentially heard a argument that caused them to critically think and maybe develop some new ideas. So that's what we're seeing here, okay? Now, let me do this. Here is the woman who is ostensibly, she's the pick to head up this new DHS Disinformation Governance Board. Her name is Nina Jankowicz. And you've never seen someone so unserious in a position like this. Or maybe you have, but here goes.
Laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. It's how you hide a little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared bad intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain. They're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious. Woo.
That's Nina Jankowicz. And again, she will be the head of the Department of Homeland Security's Disinformation Governance Board. So why was the Department of Homeland Security stood up in the first place? Because it came about in the wake of the 9/11 tragedy. Okay, so say the wrong thing on Twitter, and you're going to be lumped over in that department in a category where, you'd be right up there with maybe some people that are considered terrorists. Okay. The United States government has jumped the shark. And for those of you who don't know what that reference means, just Google it, DuckDuckGo it, or, find it on your own. But this is what we're dealing with. Now, let me say one last thing before we get out of here today. Community. As the economy continues to evolve, it's going to be very important that you develop community. Now, when I say community, I'm not saying necessarily you have to live in a commune where, all of you are there in one physical place. Community it has a broader definition. Let me give you some examples. When I was coming up, there was we had a next door neighbor. Lady lived right next door to my grandparents, and we lived 7 doors down from them. But this lady, she was a Caucasian woman, and that was rare in the West Baltimore that I grew up in. Okay. Now, white people had lived in the neighborhood, but then the King riots occurred, and you had white flight. Okay. Because in Baltimore, Detroit, a couple of other cities, the King riot, Watts over in LA, the King riots were really intense. All right. And so during this time, this lady was living next door to my I was not alive. Okay. This is the story. And let me jump ahead a little bit. She used to bake yeast rolls for us from scratch every single Sunday. And we used to eat together as a family at my grandmother's house and grandfather's house every Sunday. And every single Sunday, this lady, we had lived in a row house, she would knock on the wall, and that would be our signal to get up, go onto the back porch, and receive the rolls from her. And now when I was coming up, this was just something that was done. I didn't even know why it was done. It was just done. It was so routine. I thought that white people are supposed to pass you dinner rolls over the porch every Sunday. That's how routine it was. And so one day as I got older, I asked my grandmother, why did she do that? And she said, well, when the King riots occurred, her son wanted to come down here and get her. But Dave was my grandfather, my grandmother's husband. Dave called him and said, do not come into the city. We will protect Anne. Her name was Miss Anne. And you don't have to worry. Just don't come into the city because we don't want anything to happen to you. So that's what they did. They protected Miss Anne. Because again, the houses were adjoined. And at the time, they said if you tied like a black sash over one of the banisters, that would be a signal not to mess with this person. And they cared for her during this time and made sure that she was safe. Okay. And she was eternally grateful. And the gesture that she was able to, provide was the rolls. And that's why she did that. Okay. And that lady did that until she was unable to do it anymore. And she grew older and she passed away. But that was a form of community. Okay. My grandparents And my aunts and uncles and my mother, they kept an eye on this woman. They even brought her into my grandparents' house at one point to make sure she was safe, okay? But they were able to do that because they knew each other. Now, a lot of times today, we don't know our neighbors, depending on what kind of situation we're in. You might want to develop some sort of relationship with like-minded people. They don't have to be your neighbors. But as we slide further into this economic evolution, we're going to need to have community. This is a form of community. I read every comment. And these comments, some people have made comments on videos I did months ago. Okay. And they're so interesting. If you go back and look at that Raytheon video I did about how woke this corporation has become. A gentleman made I believe it's a gentleman, excuse me, maybe a lady, made a comment on that video a couple of days ago. Very interesting. Go read that. But community is going to become more and more important, especially as the world continues to, lurch out of globalization, because I believe globalization is dying. Thank God. We need to produce here in our country for our citizens. All right. To the extent that we export things overseas, fine. But we need to be producing penicillin and microchips and things that are essential to our day-to-day survival. Electric transformers. Okay. We need to be producing those things. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay. This is what we're dealing with. And this is why they do not want a revolution on their hands fueled by information that is in opposition to the garbage they're putting out there. Okay. Biden was at the correspondence dinner last night. And he was just having a good old time, man, laughing about the state of the economy. It's not hurting him. He doesn't feel it. He doesn't even know where the hell he is. Okay. There's a code that a president of the United States has to memorize daily. That code has to do with the launch of nuclear weapons if it needs to happen. Do you really believe that Joe Biden can remember that code 5 minutes after they've given it to him? Who's really running the country? We know who is not. So we got to tough it out, guys, for 2 more years until we can get some adults back in charge and get people like Nina Jankowicz out of positions of power. Okay. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. To learn more about how you can achieve financial independence, check out these videos we recently posted on the Money Changes Everything channel.